So today on the show, I invited Adam Schneider, whom I've known for many years. Hope you enjoy the show as much as I enjoy talking to Adam. Let's get to the intro. Hey Ballers, welcome to episode 101. Today, we're going to talk about the essential business partners. With me is Adam Schneider from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hey Adam, welcome
Hey
to the
V,
show.
I'm
Thank you.
excited to be on it.
Yes, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on actually doing some of my own videos that are how-to videos for real estate investors that are essentially 2 to 5 minute short videos to help people to answer the questions that we get asked repeatedly. And so it's an efficiency piece to help everyone out in the community.
That's amazing. See what I said? Very sharing. So, what is the biggest surprise that you've had in the past few months, and why?
No doubt about the answer to that one. So when COVID hit, I think everyone I talked to thought that the market was going to completely shift and it was going to have a lot of problems, sort of like 2008 did. Prices would be down and everybody was looking to sell. And it's been the exact opposite because of the interest rates being so low, the shift in where people can live, the fact that people don't want to be renters anymore if they can afford to be home buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has completely been the opposite. And in our market, in many markets, prices have gone up and it's been more of a seller's market than ever before when I thought it was going to be the opposite.
I think you and I were just talking about this the other day about how the number of actives, right? The available in inventory.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we look at the measurement in our local MLS for the actives versus what's under contract versus what's sold. And now during COVID versus pre-COVID, we're at about 40% less, fewer actives and more under contract and sold. Our days on market's lower. Everything's just going really fast right now.
Well, then does that make it harder for you to buy?
Yeah, the way we measure it is that we look at how much do we have to spend in advertising to get enough leads to buy a house. And this year we've had to spend more in advertising than we have in the past to buy the same number of houses for sure.
But then everything you buy, you have no issue with selling.
Right. It's been easy to sell. So if you make any mistakes on the buy of the house, usually those mistakes are hidden by the fact that the market's on a big rise at the moment.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think when this all started, everyone thought we were going to have another '08, right?
Right.
I myself, as a matter of fact, I would kind of just started parking everything and put everything on hold, for a little moment there just to kind of see where this was going.
Right. I think we all did. We all felt like we were just grabbing onto the back of the train and we didn't know where the train was going to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what? We've known each other for what, 6, 7 years now?
Whenever you joined, yeah. Yeah, it's probably 6 or 7 years. I remember the first time we met, we were in a restaurant bar.
Right. So, little background is we both own HomeVestor franchise together. I mean, not together, but we each own our own franchise. And your operation has grown so much over the years. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so my background is I was in corporate world for a long time. And then in 2012, I took that hat off and I decided to be a real estate investor. And I had no previous experience. So in my case, I wanted to be part of a system because I'd read the book by Michael Gerber, The E-Myth Revisited, and he talked about being part of an operation and a system, you can be more successful. So I bought into that and joined HomeVestors, the We Buy Ugly Houses people. At the same time, V, I got my real estate license and then the journey started. And frankly, I wasn't very good at it in the beginning and I had to fumble and bumble and stumble, and that was 2012. And by 2014, the home office and I had connected, and they felt like it'd be good for me to be a development agent to help coach other franchise operators, which I really enjoy doing. And then in 2015 or so, I started a lending business that was modest at first, and it's become a somewhat of a full-time kind of thing as well. and I've stumbled upon a rental portfolio over time. So I've got a modest one. We've got 20 doors at the moment. And the way I do my model for what I want to do is when I buy houses, about 80 to 90% of them, I want to turn them over quickly, either by wholesaling or flipping. And then the other ones I want to keep. And so I want to have a steady stream of building a rental business. And so now I have multiple streams of income with the home buying and the lending and the coaching and the rental portfolio.
That's amazing. Really is. So you said you were in the corporate world. What did you do?
I was in the fascinating business of car rental. If you
Ah,
ever if you ever want to get someone really excited during a cocktail hour, just start talking about car rental and they'll leave you alone in a hurry.
car rental, huh? I didn't
Right.
know that.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, the truth is, whenever you mention you're in car rental, everybody has an experience that was some bad experience, and when they want to tell you the whole story about the bad car rental. So, anyway, I left that after 2 decades, and now I'm in real estate.
So you came in, you had no real estate experience.
That's right.
You went right in, and then what? So you started out by yourself.
Right.
Did you have a team, a partner?
Yeah. So I know a lot of what we want to talk about today is about teams and partners. So for the different things that I do, I've got different organizational structures. So in the beginning, it was just me. So I would go on all the appointments when leads came in and go there and make the offers and take every deal from cradle to grave, the whole cycle. And if you're going to be a single operator, you've got to know how to be the person who can do all jobs, because you may at some point be the last man standing and you've got to
Hmm.
pitch in. And then as it grew, I added someone to help me with going on the buy appointments, the
Hmm.
appointment to go buy houses. And I added a coordinator. And so that's for the home buying business. And then for the lending business, I've got a partner. And so we divvy up tasks. And then for the coaching of the other franchisees, I've got a partner. So we divvy up tasks. For the landlord business, I self manage very few, and I've got property managers. I've got quite a wide geography base, and so I need to rely on the property managers.
Yeah, I'm still so impressive. I remember the first time I met you, we were, like you said, at the restaurant, and I knew you were somebody then already. Maybe
Well,
it's that stylish hairstyle.
yeah, yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Well, I remember you were just getting started. You were trying to figure out your way, just like we all were, weren't you? And you've navigated it. And now all of a sudden, you're doing podcasts. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's been an amazing ride, and I want to continue, and hopefully to help many other people along the way. So what is the biggest challenge that you have right now?
Well, on the home buying, for sure, the lack of inventory has been the challenge. And I think that it's artificial because the government has influenced it by what it's done with the forbearance and the foreclosure. So we don't see much foreclosure business or pre foreclosure business. And the interest rates being so low, everybody's wanting to buy. And so it's really crowded in the space. You have to work harder to acquire the inventory right now. So I think that that's the number one challenge from a short term business look.
So the challenge is not being able to get enough buy,
Correct.
get
That's
enough
right.
deals,
Mhm.
and how are you going to overcome that?
So what it simply has meant, V, at the end of the day is you have to work a little harder. You have to look under some more rocks that you may not have looked under before. And then in our case, where so much of what we do when we buy is really a derivative of how much we spend in advertising, it's just meant spending more money in advertising and then emotionally getting to the point where you're okay realizing that you're going to need to spend more money in advertising, but you know the houses are going to come, and then the profits are okay on the back end on it. So it's just maybe more of a mental inner conversation that I had to get over.
Spend more money is what I heard you said.
Yes.
It's funny because the number one complaint we hear out there, right, is uh cost to buy. We call it cost per deal is going up. People complain about it all day long, but I mean, that's the nature of the business. Isn't that right?
Well, it is, but if we are so emotional with it, it's such an emotional ride on it, and we only can look at one side and we forget the other side. But if you put it in perspective, what it ends up happening in our area is that there's a ratio of every dollar of advertising spent is going to equal a certain amount of money in revenue. And so it's costing us more in advertising to buy, but the revenue's gone up. And so the ratio is continuing to be fine. But if we only focus on the one side of the equation and the cost, we get upset. And when we realize that the revenues are outweighing the cost, all of a sudden we become happy again. So it's this lumpy business and it's a up and down ride. And I tell people when they're getting started that you've got to recognize that if you've been in a business that was stable and you're jumping into this one, which has these ups and downs, you've got to be emotionally prepared and you've got to have the cash there to be able to handle those bumpy rides. You've got to have lines of credit or extra cash sitting on the sideline, that dry powder ready for when you need it.
Well, you just said something, and I want to come back to that later. Okay, so let's say this. Give you an example. For someone who's brand new, you know, don't know anything about real estate like you were several years ago, back in 2012, right?
Right.
Looking at real estate today and say, I want to get into real estate. I want to start investing. I want to buy deals. Can you share with them who they need to have on their team, in the beginning? And then maybe we can talk about as they progress and grow like you have, who else they need to add.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you some questions just to help people on this one. So when
Yeah.
you say that when someone says they're going to be a real estate investor,
Mm-hmm.
that's too broad, I think. So if someone says they're a lawyer, what kind of lawyer are they? If they're a doctor, what kind of doctor are they? If they're an investor, what kind of investor are they? Are they a buy and hold investor, a fix and flip investor? Do they want to be passive with a lender? Because each of those stories has everything else that's going to be different with
So,
it.
so for today conversations, we're talking about maybe someone that lost their job or whatnot that's not working, and they want to dive into this real estate investing and want to start getting their feet wet, go out and buy their own home deal.
So are these buy and hold investors you're thinking of, or fix and flip people, or either one?
Could be either one. They
Okay,
want to get one deal under their belt, maybe two, maybe three.
right. So here's the guidance and the thoughts that I try to share with people who are in that scenario.
Yeah.
The first thing I tell them is they can be over analytical, and if they keep analyzing everything, by the time they've made their decision that something's right, that property's been bought and sold a couple of times over. So they're going to have to be a little bit of shoot first, ask some questions a little bit later on it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be that way, my recommendation is that they look for something that's not a high risk, high reward, but that's a low risk, low reward. So whatever their normal later on ROI model is going to be, that's not important in the beginning. In the beginning, the importance is the experience. So it may mean that they have to go a little further out geographically to find a property, and that the numbers are smaller, but the risk is smaller. And so if they can shift their mindset from a certain minimum profitability for long term to just get their feet wet, get a property, go through the cycle of whatever their cycle is going to be, that's the way I push everybody.
Okay.
That's the first thing I tell everybody. In terms of learning, people can either do it with a mentor,
Yeah.
or they can do it with a guru, or they can do it with a lot of book reading, or they can do it like you and I did, maybe join a system. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. It depends if they want to be part-time or full-time. But somewhere along the way, it sure does help to have somebody on your side who can put their arm around you and give you some advice that they've learned because they got punched in the mouth somewhere along the line beforehand.
So you're talking about the support,
Correct.
getting into the right eco support system.
Yes.
Okay. So first the mindset.
Yeah, you have a mindset. I think, again, you've got to identify what inventory you want to start with.
Uh-huh.
You've got to get a property. You've got to get something that you can go ahead and you can either do your flip or do your rental, whatever it is.
Right.
And you can do all the book reading you want to on everything. But
Yeah.
until you get that one property,
Yeah.
it's all for naught. So I really think if you can find that property, however you want to do that. So some people will do it by going on market and going on MLS, having an agent and all that. And some people go off market either on their own or they'll do it through a wholesaler. But
Mm-hmm.
I push people to get their property first. That's critical. In terms of the team
Mm-hmm.
on it, again, it depends on what their cycle is that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So um, it may be that they need an agent first because they've got
Mm-hmm.
to find a property. So that
Right.
may be the most important person in the beginning.
What about wholesaler?
And if they want an off market property, then a wholesaler can be perfect. And so what I tell people is when you're going to market yourself to a wholesaler and tell someone that you want inventory that they have,
Yeah.
you want to be strategic about it.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to want the easy thing that's the most money.
Right.
So the wholesaler is going to then look for the person who's either going to take the hard stuff or is the easiest to deal with or is going to give them the most money.
Right.
So if you start with the end in mind and realize how the wholesaler is thinking and then
Mm-hmm.
match yourself up so that you're in line with making yourself the best potential buyer for the wholesaler, that's the way you've got to present yourself.
Okay. Okay. So we're talking about helping identify where you can buy the homes, how you
Right?
get access to the home. One is
Correct.
by either connect with a realtor or connect with a wholesaler or several wholesaler, right? Okay.
Right.
So who else do we need?
So for the acquisition, those are the main
Okay.
players. So once you've got something you're looking at, you've got to be able to identify the value of the property.
Right.
So you need to evaluate the as is value and
Mm-hmm.
the after repair or ARV value. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. You can either find that real estate agent or another investor, or you may be an agent yourself and you may be an agent who wants to be an investor and you can already do that. But you've got to be able to evaluate the property value now and in the future. So you'll need someone to help you on that. Then if the property needs repairs, you're going to need to figure out what those repairs are going to cost you. And
Right.
so if you didn't come from an industry where you grew up learning this stuff, you're going to need to figure out some way to balance using software and real life experience, or you'll have to get an inspector to help you or a contractor to help you. So you'll need somebody to help you out to understand what your repairs are going to cost you.
That's another beast in its own. Like getting the right contractor to give you the right bids and
Right. And I tell people, I think that there's really three buckets of contractors, V. There's the highest end one where you're going to need for the most complicated job and they're going to be the most money and they're going to have big teams and you may not see them on the property very often. You're going to have the least expensive one who's going to be the most cost effective, at least it looks it on the front end, who will be on the site all the time, but they don't have any of their own cash, so you're always going to have to be fronting the money for it.
yep.
Or you'll have someone in the middle who has some cash, is sometimes on site, sometimes not on site. So you really want to make sure that you're matching the right contractor with the right project.
Yeah. So we got where you find the deal. You got to figure out where, how you're gonna get to the deals, and then how you're gonna estimate the value of the home, what kind of how much it's gonna cost you to be in the deal, right?
Correct.
Do you think as where you close, what is important?
When you
Having
say
a
where you
relation-
close, what do you
Having
mean?
a relationship with a title company or an attorney.
Well, so there's two kinds of deals. There's some deals that are just no brainers and every single attorney or title company can handle it. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really matter too much. They're a little
Mm-hmm.
bit different in price. And then you'll have some that have some different nuances to it. And it's really nice to have somebody who's very familiar working with wholesalers and assignment contracts and so on. So that's something that can develop over time. I don't know if that's necessarily the most important first person to work with, but once you
Okay.
get going, there's certainly an efficiency and a someone who's got appropriate bedside manners with your seller is really important as well.
I do think I don't know if I necessarily disagree with you, but I've when I first started out, I actually lost one really big deal because I went to the wrong title company. So
Yeah, yeah. So I've heard those horror stories, and I think that if you've got the time and you can go ahead and vet it out, or help someone help you with that, it's really wise to avoid that. But if in the beginning you're saying who are the most important people to put on a team, the other ones we've been mentioning so far are generally more important, in
Okay.
my opinion. Now, I'm in North Carolina, so we're an attorney closing state, so there's a few nuanced differences, but the same thing. We've had attorneys who've made it either easier or more difficult for sure.
Yeah, yeah. What about funding? Are they important? Funding partners. This episode is brought to you by Bus Vacation Rentals, a premier property management company in Houston and Galveston area. Give Bus a call to learn more on why it makes more sense for you to rent out your investment home short-term over long-term. Check out their website at listwithbuzz.com. Again, that is listwithbuzz.com. Now, back to the REBaller show.
Yeah, so what I tell people is if they're looking to buy one house and they're able to self-fund that deal, they may as well self-fund the deal because then there's no debt service, there's no points and no interest
Mm-hmm.
for it. If they want to grow or they don't have the money to self-fund it, then they need to look at the alternatives. So by order of least expensive, the bank is the least expensive, but we don't see the bank in our space very often because they require appraisals and they want the borrower to put 20% down, and it takes a long time, and they maybe won't do that kind of property. And so the sellers and the wholesalers and the auctions, none of them will take a bank financed offer.
Right.
So if you want to be able to be quick in this space, you've got to have cash or a hard money loan. So the second least expensive is the private money lender, in terms of a private lender being a family member. And so they'll usually be flexible to deal with, lower rates than some of the other options we'll talk about, but they may or may not have the money at the end of the day when push comes to shove. And then you'll have private, local, institutional-ish kind of lenders, which is what I do, or national institutional lenders. And you'll know that these people have the money and they know what they're doing, so you don't have to worry about that, but they'll be much higher than the bank rates. So what I tell people is use the hard money lending to get into the deal. You don't want to lose the deal. The most important thing is to get that house.
Right.
That's the key. Don't worry about a couple $100 interest here or there. But if it's someone who's doing these and they want to do that BRRRR strategy where they buy it, rehab it, rent it, and refinance it to a bank, they want to get the hard money lender out really quickly, and they want to get to the bank loan. And so in that model, it seems so easy, but the bank will always pull the rug out from under you if you haven't been clear enough about what's going to happen. If they haven't explained to you and you haven't asked them that you need to season the property before they'll give you a loan based on appraisal, then they'll only give you the loan based on the purchase cost and you're going to be stuck. And so in terms of money, you should have a bank relationship set up ahead of time and have a couple of private or hard money lenders or the family and friend or some avenues where you can get cash quickly so you can have a more powerful offer to buy the house.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry.
Okay, good.
A little glitchy there. That's very my head is still turning, even though I've been in business for 6 years now. That's a lot of information.
Well, I think you're probably better at this than I am. I think you're just being very humble.
So, can we maybe simplify it a little, and just if you start out and if you got to have we talk about what you got to start figuring out how you're going to find the deal, how you're going to analyze the deal, and then how you're going to pay for it, and how you're going to sustain yourself until you get it sold so you can collect your money back.
Right.
Did I get it right?
Sure. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Okay. So then as you grow and evolve, who else do you think they need to get on their team?
So when people say team, and everyone likes to talk about having their real estate team, I think people need to clarify it. So you're going to have you're either dating, you're going steady, or you're married.
We going to this story again?
Yeah.
All right. My favorite story.
Yeah. So if you're dating, what that means is that it's really quick, random transactional thing. So you've got something and you need a home inspector or an appraiser or something, and you'd like to have someone you know, but you'll use them and then you may not talk to them for a while. That's one kind of team member, which is really a contractor or a subcontractor on that.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have the ones where you're going steady, where you're dealing with them a lot. And that might be like an employee that you might have, as an example, or someone where you're doing a lot of work with. And then you're married, and that means that you've got a partner. And if you've got a partner and you're going to develop a partnership and you've never done that before, one of the most important things in a partnership is that you know what your exit strategy is, because it can be really difficult. If you're doing a flip and you have a partner, V, it's easy to know how it ends. You sell the property, you split your money, it ends.
Right.
But if you've got people who are rental investors and they want to have buy and hold, at some point, one of the partners is going to decide they want out, and it's very complicated if you haven't already lined up with your prenuptial agreement on how you're going to get out of that team. So for me, I've got employees in some parts for helping with the buying and for the coordinating, but I've got some partners in some other agreements. And in those deals, we spent half of our discussion about how we were going to work together, just talking about how we were going to exit, which was sort of weird, but you got to do that early so you don't have all the pain later. The other thing I tell people when you're going to partner, sometimes what will happen is people will meet each other at a local Riya meeting.
Right.
And they find out that they both love doing the rehab.
Right.
They both watch HGTV. They both like all the stuff that they see. They want to be partners.
Yep.
Well, having two people who do the same thing in a partnership creates a redundancy on the one end, and it's got this gaping hole on some other skill set.
Right.
So you really need to find a partner who complements you. So one of you is always business development, looking to keep the pipeline going to buy new properties, and the other one's the operations. So first step might be to just self-assess one's skills and resources, and then from that determine where they need the partners or the team members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to clarify, when I say team, I mean, there's, like you said, there's two sides of it, right? The internal, your own operations, and then the external of who you're going to need to have, like your vendors or, you know, other relationships to keep your business going.
So which one do you want to talk about?
We can talk about the internal team.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So go ahead.
Go.
So if you're really good at buying houses, then you might, and that's what you like doing, and you like talking with sellers directly or talking with the wholesalers or the referral sources or the agents, then you probably don't want to hire someone to do that job. But that might mean that you're really not that good at the keeping your I's dotted and T's crossed and the books all lined up. So you might need someone to help you with the back end coordinator. So each person's going to be different in what their needs are going to be there. And if you're doing a lot of rehabs, at some point you're going to want to hire someone who's a specialist, really a project manager, to keep a handle on all of those rehabs. If you're building your rental portfolio, in the beginning you might self-manage them, or you might use property managers, but you might get to a big enough size that you start your own rental management company. So it's really an individualized discussion based on resources, skill sets, and personality.
Do you quantify, do you give yourself a goal where you say, if I hit this, this is where I need to bring on the next team member? How do you decide?
Yeah. When the pain is bad enough, I go to the doctor.
Okay.
That's how I do it. So if it's a slight pain, I keep hoping it's going to go away, and I go to the doctor. And when the pain gets big enough with whatever the pain is, then I go to the doctor and I tell him I need some help. And that's not very quantitative. It's just more of an emotional feel about it. And I know you and I have talked about time management and how are you spreading yourself too thin. And when it gets to be too much and you only have so much bandwidth, what are you going to do? You're either going to add someone or you're going to modify what you're doing. And so it's been really much more of a feel than an analytical scientific approach.
Yeah, it is. It is that constant struggle when you are your own, you run your own business, right? Is having to manage time and your quality of life.
Right. But I'll tell you one thing, while it's frustrating if you're the only person and you've got to be the one to order all the supplies and all that, the nice part is if things go upside down and you don't have a gigantic staff and you didn't buy a building and all that,
Yeah.
you can be nimble enough to adjust really quickly. And you're seeing that in COVID, that there's some operations that are so nimble that they can make modifications and they can sort of hunker down and wait it
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
very easily, like you were
Yeah.
talking about, without it being too painful. Whereas some other people, they're so locked and loaded with their commitments that they're in a really difficult spot.
What I find really truly amazing is that we have people that are doing 60, 70, 80 deals a year with 3 staff, right? And we have the same operations doing the same number of deals a year with 20 people on their staff.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know?
know that is amazing. One of the things that I always wonder when we look at that is we see the number of deals people are doing,
Right?
but we don't see the profit they're making per deal.
That's
So we
true.
don't know who's doing better. What's your measurement? If it's a total profit, you could sure do a lot more deals if you wanted to take a lower profit margin on it. So that may be part of the answer. Or it just may be that some people are just better at things than others.
So earlier you said it when you first started out that you want to focus on getting that deal started. I remember back in my days when I first started, I wanted to do every deal, right? And of course, I did have a mentor at the time, and my DA said that deal was it's not worth my time. Get away from it. But of course, when I was new at that time, I did not want to get away from it.
Right.
So, what advice do you have for those people like me in my day one, which is really hard headed and want to do every deal?
Right. I tell people the second worst problem is to miss out on a good deal. The worst problem is to get stuck with a bad deal. But sometimes you don't know it's a bad deal because you're just getting started and you don't have enough experience. My general way that I look at the deals is the following. I have a certain dollar amount that I want per deal.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got to do a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
a certain dollar amount I want if I'm doing a modest amount of work, and a certain dollar amount if I don't have to do much work at all. So I look at the work involved, and then I look at the risk factor on it. And so obviously the more risk, the more reward. A lot of times what it's easy to have happen is we're trying to help these sellers and we've shifted their problem and we're trying to save the world and make it our problem. And it's not our problem, it's their problem. And so we just got to be cognizant sometimes that we want to balance helping people with making the business decisions. And the ones that have always seem to me the most frustrating are the ones where I've worked the hardest for the least amount of money, doing the most things to try to solve all these little mini problems that are in the middle of it. And the problems are either with sellers or they're with the house. And sometimes you don't know in the beginning what you got in front of you.
Yeah, so I often joke. I said I need about 30,000 reasons to get up and get out of bed every morning.
Right, exactly. I hear you.
Yeah, so you gotta know when not to get in, right?
That's right.
I put it in another word. You'll stay in business if you buy the right deal. And it's the
Yes.
house that you buy that put you out of business and not the one that you don't buy.
Right. That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So how do you, in your positions, you have to maintain staying on top of the trend, learning, staying on top of the market. How do you continue to learn to do that, to stay on top of things in your position?
So it's changed during COVID because we've shifted from being with everybody then, and now we're more virtual. But in the past, I was really active with our local Riya, and I would try to go to 2 non-HomeVestors conventions or meetings a year on different topics. And then we do all of our HomeVestors meetings and conventions. And that's really, we're really lucky because we see all these different people who are all part of the same team. And that's when you
Mm-hmm.
have the aha moments. Now, when we're doing everything virtually, we have to work a little bit
Yeah.
differently on that to reach out to people. I am a big fan of certain podcasts that are
Mm-hmm.
real estate related, and so I'll try to catch up on those. And I try to get different ones that have different style and different content with them. I'm active with Bigger Pockets, and I found that that's a really good resource when there's
Yeah.
something that I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
That there'll be plenty of articles there. So the combination of being part of a franchise system and putting yourself out there a little bit, being part of a local real estate investor association, that's sort of a nice combination,
Mm-hmm.
I think, for a lot of people. Because if you're doing everything by yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you only see things one way, don't you? And when you and I talk, I always walk away from it going, oh, I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah. So attending events. What about reading? Is there something that you follow? Some articles, newspaper?
No, no, I'm not. Well, I mean, here and there, one off things, but I'm not religiously following any one particular author.
Okay. So attending Riya uh podcast.
Yeah. There'll always be some kind of a convention or some kind of a speaker who's going to come on through your town who will be talking about something that may not be something that's going to be necessarily your cup of tea, but it's helpful to at least hear it, be aware of it. Um, and then there may be certain people who you've learned are really good at something you want to do. And if you can find some way you can match up with them, that's helpful. So a good example is Airbnb. So 10 years ago, nobody was doing Airbnb. Now everybody's wanting to do Airbnb. People have sort of self-discovered and become experts on that. And so if somebody else wants to do it, you probably save yourself a lot of time if you can match up with somebody who's already doing it.
That's a really good advice to match up with somebody who's already doing it. Like how I match up with you early on.
Oh my goodness. I'm blushing again.
So what's your favorite hobby besides buying houses?
So my new favorite hobby, V, is I joined a boat club. So there's a national boat club called Freedom Boat Club. And my wife and I, every time we go on a friend's boat, we like the boat trip, but we know we are not good boat owners. We don't want to store the boat and take care of it and get the trailer and all that kind of stuff. So with the boat club, you join. It's like a tennis
That
club
mean
or
you have a
golf club.
yacht somewhere?
No, boat club, not yacht club. Yeah, those are different things. And so you join and then you're a member, and then they've got a fleet of boats, 19, 21-foot boats, pontoons, that stuff. And then when you want one, you just go ahead and you book it. You go there, you do your little boating for a couple hours, and you come back. They help you dock it, and I haven't crashed yet. And they fill it up with gas, and you just go home.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so that's our new thing. So we were sort of getting cabin fever with COVID going on, and we'd had a couple of trips planned that fell through. So we had some extra money budgeted for that kind of thing. So we just decided we're now boat people.
That's really cool. You know how to swim?
Yeah, we know how to swim. We take our dog with us. The dog goes swimming, the whole thing. We got a whole family event going.
Yeah, I can't do that. I don't know how to swim.
You don't know how to swim? Well, I've learned something new about V today.
Well, I mean, uh, I can float for a little bit.
Okay, well we'll bring a little floaty device for you if you come and visit.
Yeah. Hey, so how does the audience get in touch with you?
Yep, thanks for asking. So the HomeVestors email, Adam.Schneider, Schneider, at HomeVestors.com. People want to talk lending, Adam at OakwoodLending.com. I've got a bunch of lending videos out there. If people are learning how to be lenders and they want that, I can help them with that. Or they can reach out through you and you'll track me down some way.
We'll put your information in the show notes.
That
So,
sounds
Adam,
great.
thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us, with the listeners today. And what an amazing show.
V, I'm so honored that you asked me to do this. There's so many people you could have chosen, and I was so excited. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Well, I couldn't have chosen a better candidate
You're very
to
kind.
go with me today. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you.